So one thing that I always used to doubt is regarding carbon dating, because different, they give different timelines for different things, and I always feel that with carbon dating is Indian history dated very is shown as younger, because most of the dates are within thousands of years. But I feel that the Bharata Varsha's history is longer than that. What do you think about carbon dating?
Okay. I don't know if you know how long carbon dating as a technique exists. Do you?
Please
Okay.
enlighten.
1950s.
Okay.
So about for 75 years it's with us.
Absolutely.
It's a phenomenal technique based on a carbon isotope ratio, and
Yes.
we'll not go into technical details. But it's a phenomenal thing, which is to say, when something gets frozen, so to say, like say an animal dies, that animal, when that animal was living, it was taking all the organic matter, and the organic matter that is exposed to the surface has a certain ratio of those isotopes. But once that animal dies, it kind of gets frozen, and I'm making it very simplistic, okay, for a layperson type of thing. Now what happens is, so we have that thing as a frozen, a particular ratio, and we can have another calibration of that carbon isotope ratio, like a graph, like a calibration graph, like we did in our physics and labs, chemistry labs, we
You
just
draw it down.
like instrumental analytics method. Think of that, right?
Yeah.
The different thing, flame photometry and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Very similar. And now with a lot of advances, you can extend the time period for carbon dating up to 55,000 years in the past from today.
Okay.
Okay, extremely powerful technique, extremely reliable technique. So far so good. So where is this problem of carbon dating creating a younger scenario for Indian history or Indian archaeology? That has nothing to do with the carbon dating.
Okay.
It has to do with the lack of scientific acumen and the logical reasoning skills of archaeologists.
Okay.
Archaeologists in India, archaeologists at the ASI, archaeologists around the world.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what happens. And I have mentioned this many times. So our archaeologists, our meaning archaeologists around the world, it's a very phenomenal discipline.
Yeah.
I call this dirt archaeology,
Yeah.
because they are gung-ho on digging things and finding things and then dating them.
True.
So in order to date, it's important that there is some organic matter. If there is no organic matter, they cannot use carbon dating. There are some other techniques, will not go there, thermoluminescence and many others. So there has to be organic matter. Okay. Now what is the relationship? If there is an organic matter found next to some object, the assumption is that that organic matter was there with the object at that same time.
So if I put this pen with this book, they will say that they were both from the same time.
You got it.
Okay.
And in reality,
If they are organic.
Correct. Yeah. In reality, that may not be
May
true.
not be
That
true.
is number one. So what happens is, so they dig something, they do a good job, phenomenal job. Kudos to them, congratulations and thanks to them.
Yeah.
They do a lot of stuff. The second one is using a scientific method such as carbon dating to date that thing. They also do a pretty good job.
Sure.
Nothing. Only the issue is they don't understand this assumption that goes into it.
True.
Number one. And the third one is taking that data and connecting it with a historical event. There, I will say, I assert that all the archaeologists or their work that I'm aware of, since the whole discipline of archaeology began, like maybe 150, 200 years, especially since you asked about carbon dating last 75,000 years, they are a royal disaster.
Okay.
In general, but especially in determining or connecting that data, connecting that evidence with a historical event. So do you know what they do? So for example, let's say there was one Professor B.B. Lal, very famous and did a lot of great work, okay? So he was given this commissioning and he dug around, say, Mathura, he dug around Hastinapur, he dug around Kurukshetra. Now these all three things are connected geographically and historically with Mahabharata.
True.
At certain level, or how far ever he dug, maybe there is nothing below that. That's okay. That's happened. Like you don't know, if you dug here, you might go to certain level. There you dig, and it may go to different level. So wherever they went, but to his credit, he found a certain type of pottery, which is kind of consistent between, say, Kurukshetra, Hastinapur, and Mathura. No, kudos to him. So that's logic is not
Because
bad.
there was some consistency.
Some consistency.
Yeah.
Well, it's an Indian civilization, right? And when he dated it, it also came to the same time period, which should not be surprise as a matter of fact. That time period was about 1000 BC. Initially, they did it just by layering, not by carbon dating. But again, kudos to them that they finally could do it with the carbon dating. Those dates also match.
Okay.
So like they're layering. They call it different thin layers. How long it takes to accumulate certain dirt and something. Long story short, so 1000 BC. So you find a certain type of pottery that's called PGW, painted graver, in 3 places, all dated at 1000 BC. So far, so good. And you know what? What should be the conclusion? Hey, we definitely know that there was a civilization which we don't know anything else about, but they definitely used PGW, and they were spread over this area, this triangle, if you want to call it, Hastinapur, Kurukshetra. That's all it says. Because if you want to connect it with some historical another evidence or historical incident, you have to have some description in that historical text or whatever it is to connect with this PGW. There is none. But then he made this jump, which I consider unscientific, illogical, and idiotic. That, with all due respect to him, but this is definitely what I just said, these 3 things. And he jumped on and said Mahabharata happened 1000 BC. Now recently there was a conference, a symposium in Vizag, and Dr. David Frawley, Vamdev Shastri was there, and in his speech, because I had criticized the way I just told you, and in his speech he said actually he had a opportunity to have this discussion with Professor B.B. Lal, and Professor B.B. Lal had, when that conversation happened, I don't know when, retracted his statement about the timing of Mahabharata to be 1000 BC. But that message has not reached the people. And even when, like I have mentioned it, Dr. David Frawley has mentioned it, now we are doing it, still the people in this field are so stubborn, and they just think like, oh, once we make a statement, we won't change it, no matter how wrong or how right
they
we
want
are.
to stick to that.
Very unfortunate, and therefore that nonsense continues.
True.
But to Professor B.B. Lal's credit, and thanks to Dr. David Frawley, that actually he retracted. B.B. Lal retracted his statement because he hopefully, I mean, I would assume that he understood the lack of tarka logic in this. But otherwise, carbon dating is an extremely powerful technique, very useful until 55,000 years. You have to be aware of these assumptions.
True. Thank you. Thanks for that.